This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
I said, man, I want more out of life than that. And I realized that the only way I was going to do that is if I went for it on my own, because being where I was, I just didn't see the ability of working for somebody and them treating me right.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. This is Kevin Dubois. I have with me Dave Vasser of Nitrous Outlet. Nitrous Outlet is a nitrous supply company. I think they do a lot of domestic stuff, but I've actually had a customer with their products on an Evo before. So, Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us.
Cool. Yeah, I really want to appreciate you for taking the time to share your story with us. And so why don't we go ahead and get started? And why don't you tell us how did you get involved in cars and take us back to when you were a kid?
Well, I've always been raised around cars. Started with my uncle and my dad. Whenever I was younger, before I even had a driver's license, I was actually into street racing and ran around with older group of guys, and it just stuck. So my entire life, everything was evolved around making it faster, whether it was go-karts, motorcycles, cars, it didn't matter.
And you were grew up in Texas? Because that's where your shop is now, right?
Correct. I originally grew up in Waco, Texas. I left for a short period of time to go into commercial framing in Dallas, and I ended up back in Waco again.
Okay, and that area has really exploded lately. It's a lot bigger than it was, even when I first moved down here. So,
correct.
Okay, and did you go to like a trade school or college or anything like that?
No, I'm actually kind of unique in the fact that I'm actually a 10th grade dropout.
Okay.
I did get my GED, and everything I always did was just hands-on. So everything I've done has been self-taught.
Okay. And you just like bought cars in your high school and just started messing with them? Correct.
And to be honest with you, a lot of my cars weren't always the impressive one. I had more luck helping friends that actually had money. And then as things progressed, I would play with my own stuff, but it wasn't ever the fastest.
All right, so you're actually playing with other people's cars then.
Correct.
Makes it easier to justify doing it if you're not having to spend your own money on it, right?
Well, I always had something. Like my first car was a 67 Mercury Monterey, so it was a big boat.
Okay.
Boat. And then I got into 60 model trucks, and I was actually known for street racing a 66 Chevy truck, and it was a nice truck. I built it frame up. And back then, it ran high 12s. Back whenever I was in high school, and in my younger years, if you had a 12-second vehicle, that was fast. Now it's nothing.
What kind of time frame was that?
That was 94.
Okay.
Around there, 93.
Okay. And then you're building these cars, and you dropped out of high school. And what were you doing as a profession? Obviously, you had to be doing something, I would assume, right?
Yeah, I was framing houses actually, and my family is contractors, and so I went to work with my uncle.
Okay.
And it started off just odd and end stuff like picking up job sites and picking up trash, and then it got into framing, and I realized really quick I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life.
And so how did you get into, working on cars as a profession?
Well, I'd always done it. It was just kind of, I did it for fun. And so I went through a series of different jobs working at mobile home plants. I was a locksmith for 5 years. Worked at Home Depot as a department lead in the electrical department. Then I started installing cable, and about that time I was just tired I felt like I had no future ahead of me. And I was always great at making stuff fast. So I actually opened our first speed shop in 2000. And back then I was just selling race gas and nitrous out of an enclosed trailer, and I had to borrow a truck on the weekends to pull it to the racetrack. About a year or two later, I opened our first install shop as a 3,000 square foot shop. Well, actually, I went into a strip center mall first. It was like a 900 square foot building. I shared it with a company called Autotech that was an import shop. And I honestly had no clue what I was doing. I just started offering hot rod parts to buddies of mine, and it's it started from the garage and then and race car trailer, and then it went to that little strip center. And local guy that did business here was ripping people off and not really doing a great job. So I went over to his shop, and his head technician was a friend of mine, and I offered him a job. And I left and went and rented our first building, bought our first lift, and before you knew it, that 3,000 square foot building, we outgrew it. We had 3 techs, and then we went into an old Montgomery Ward repair building, and I had three sales guys and 4 techs in the back. And back then, we had a 2-month backlog to get your car in the shop.
Even with 7 people, huh?
Correct. And Nitrous Outlet kind of evolved about that time, and the reason why we're actually Nitrous Outlet is because we actually resold everyone else's product. We didn't manufacture anything in the beginning, and I was in my early 20s. I really didn't have anybody to go to for business advice. Everything just I just went with street smarts and what felt right. And my head technician had decided that he wanted to open his own install shop, and to be honest with you, Nitrous Outlet was doing good, and I was always at employees' mercy of just finding good help, and I wasn't the best businessman, and I paid my install tech 60% of the shop ticket, so by Wednesday they'd made a good paycheck, and I was struggling against me. Right. So I started Nitrous Outlet, and I started concentrating on making things that no one else made.
Okay.
And so, like, for example, the EFI billet plates that you see other companies make now, we were the first. So I would build those plates, and I would take another manufacturer's product and pair it up with those plates, and I offered it, to our customers. Then I started building switch panels and dedicated fuel systems, and a lot of stuff that people take for granted nowadays. They see it, and other manufacturers offer it. We were actually the first. About 2003, 2004, by that time I had became the largest dealer for one of the other companies that are, a mainstream name. I wasn't happy with the way that they were doing business, and I had sold the speed shop to my head technician, and all I was doing was Nitrous Outlet. And I realized that how well Nitrous Outlet was going to do was now at the mercy of those manufacturers making the right judgment calls. And I wasn't happy with the way things were going, and I decided, you know what, I can do a better job at this than they are. So we went full stream ahead of manufacturing. And now here it is 2017, and we're officially the largest nitrous company in the world. We have 30 employees. Last year we did just a hair under $5 million in sales. And all this started with $900.
So you've absolutely killed it, which is super awesome. So a couple of questions on that. What was the name of the install shop that you had that you first started up? What'd you call it?
It was Nitro Dave's Performance, which is my nickname is Nitro Dave, and I got friends where their kids don't even know my real name because people call me that.
Okay, and you ended up selling that to the tech that you poached from your competition, essentially, right?
Correct, I did. I ended up selling it to him.
Okay, and you've done it sounds like your success has really been from identifying and addressing your bottlenecks of your business and basically solving them. So with your shop, you realized, really the bottleneck is the employees, and it's hard to make money on a service industry because you're limited by time. And if they're not good or make mistakes, then your time is basically burned. And so you went to manufacturing, and you realized there that your manufacturing was limited by your other suppliers, and so you've kind of taken it all in-house. That's exactly what you've done, right?
That's pretty close. One thing that it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to share in common is the employee side of it. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just forces you to become a better businessman. And like now, the judgment calls I make affects 30 families. Mm-hmm. So I have to make sure that it's not just about me. I'm just the captain of the ship. So I have to make sure that I'm guiding us in the right direction. We have a great group of employees here, and there's a lot of talent in this building. And a lot of these guys have been here through the growing pains. And so whenever you take a company that's not corporately funded, and you just have one source of income, and it's manufacturing nitrous products, it's very important that you got the right team members in place, because they don't make the big paychecks right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
They have to come in and help the company grow. So it's a team process to get it there, and we've had to make a lot of sacrifices over the years, which is why it's taken since 2011 just to put our shop car back together, because business had to come first. And whenever you're growing, the last 3 years we grew 68%, 64%, and last year we grew 21%. And it was nice because we were getting the breath knocked out of us. And so
it had to back it off a little bit to kind of stabilize, it sounds like. Huh?
It did, but then January this month, or this year versus January last year, was a 47% growth in just January. So we're seeing it, and while that all sounds great, you have to find and hire all these employees and get them trained, and you have to try to make the right calls for cash flow and purchasing and just getting the company to run right. And so I find myself these days taking on things I've never experienced before: marketing budget, just looking at where you're bleeding out. We hired a CFO this year. And it's funny, as I hire these specialists to come in and help us figure out stuff, they ask us all the time, how did you make it 16 years not knowing this? And I said, street smarts.
Do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you go set out to start a business, or is it just kind of happenstance? It just happened?
No, ever since even I was a kid, I mean, I'm very allergic to grass. And whenever I was underage, you couldn't get a job. So I mowed yards. Uh-huh. And that's how I made money. And then I started buying and selling dirt bikes and go-karts and trading. And then it went into cars, and I was buying and selling cars and trading and working on stuff. I've always, even whenever I worked somewhere else, I've always had this second thing, realizing that there was other avenues for me to make income. If Nitrous Outlet shut down tomorrow, the beautiful thing of being the way I'm programmed is I would find another way to make a living.
Uh-huh. So you are definitely a driven individual. I would consider you an entrepreneur if everything you do is starting it and doing it on your own, essentially.
Yeah, and I remember whenever I first quit my job as an install tech. I was a contractor. I had taken that 66 Chevy truck that had a full manual valve body, turbo 400, and 410 posi rear end, and it was it was a solid roller motor, and I put a ladder rack on that truck, and I was out installing cable, and so everybody got a good laugh whenever I pulled up in that thing. But it's the only truck I had. I remember back doing that, and whenever I walked inside, I got mad at my supervisor. And I remember coming home and telling my wife at the time, hey, I quit my job. I'm opening a speed shop. And I remember the looks I got, and it wasn't a very supported idea. I think my friends thought I was crazy too, but I knew from that day I was ready to go, and I was going to make it work.
So tell us about that. Why did you want to take all the risk of starting your own company instead of working for somebody else?
To be honest with you, I felt like all the jobs I had throughout that time, I was limited, and I really felt like some of the decisions I made with schooling and some of that really had made a hard future on myself, and I was just trying to figure out. And so I would go to work for these places that gave all these endless promises, and I busted my ass for them, and I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, and I realized at that point the only way that I was going to be able to make a decent living was as if I did it on my own. Okay. And it was either that or go back to school. And I'm attention, I'm hyperactive. I have attention deficit. I refuse to take medication. It's just how I am. Sitting in a classroom and learning is just not something I can do. I'm a hands-on guy. And so I realized that if I was going to make it, and I knew I wanted greater things out of life, I didn't come from I have a great family, but none of them were businessmen, and they
Hmm.
weren't, they just worked their 9 to 5 and barely make ends meet. And I said, man, I want more out of life than that. And I realized that the only way I was going to do that is if I went for it on my own, because being where I was, I just didn't see the ability of working for somebody and them treating me right. And I think that's the reason I'm programmed to take really good care of my employees. As the company grows, I put it back in my employees' pocket. If I make them a promise, I keep it. And I try to build on them as well. And I feel that at the end of the day, the company is only as good as the employees that are inside the doors. So I invest in my employees because I felt like that never happened with any of the places I worked with me.
Awesome. How has location played a role in your success? I mean, Waco's not like a big city, and I don't have any idea how much the like hot rod market was when you decided to start the first business. But kind of tell us, how has that been a factor in your success?
Well, with the speed shop, it was kind of interesting because back then the car scene was better here, but most of my work was from people out of town. I would have people from Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. I had a great reputation, and everybody knew customer service wise, I would take care of them, and my techs were awesome. We did an awesome job. So uh, I kept a full house on schedule. One thing that I learned earlier on is if you make a promise, you better keep it, and the quality better be there. And so I worked everything on a schedule. And if I told you your car to be done at a certain time, if we had to work all night, it was done. And we understood the value that whenever you had to drive back to San Antonio, you didn't want to check engine light flipping on whenever you get there. So we needed to be thorough. That same mentality has always carried over even to Nitrous Outlet. The great thing about being in Waco, Texas, is that the cost of living is less here.
Oh yeah.
And rent and everything else. And so you take a company that just can't afford to go out and pay the big bucks. I was able to employ talented individuals here and afford them, and at the same time, I was also able to afford the building rent and just all the overhead expenses. And earlier on with manufacturing, and so when we start manufacturing, discounts come with buying volume, and you don't have a whole lot of buying volume, so you're not making the profit dollar you should be making compared to your competition. If I was in a place like California, we would have never made it.
The cost of living's so high.
Correct. And I have friends that own businesses there, and I scratch my head and I wonder how in the world do those people stay in business? There's no way we could have done it.
Yeah.
So
I
Waco's
believe it.
been great for the aspect of being able to afford just to get the business to grow. The downside is finding employees, because the car scene has shrank since I closed the speed shop here. And also, like whenever I was growing up, there was like a large amount of guys in high school that worked on their own cars and built hot rods to race on the weekend. And you don't have that anymore. The guys in high school here, if you drive through the parking lot, you might see some new hot rods where they gave their credit card and paid somebody to work on it, but you don't see those guys out there working on it no more.
Okay.
So you're losing that talent, and that talent is what we need inside our warehouse.
Okay, and we'll get more onto the employees here later on because I have some follow-up questions on that. But have you ever doubted yourself and wondered if this isn't going to work? What am I going to do? And how do you move forward from that?
All the time. So for us to get to where we're at, a lot of people think there's actually a joke here in town. We used to be in a out part called Speedyville, and the guys used to laugh and say I'm the richest man in Speedyville, because people actually thought I had money. And the truth is I put everything back in this place. So I have a very normal way of living. And along the line, you had to make sacrifices. And I would come in sometimes and just feel like I was running in place and question, have I thrown away? I'm 40 years old now, and I'm like, have I thrown away my future? I've had offers to go to work for bigger companies that would have paid me quite more than I pay myself. And I've questioned along the way, and I've had companies try to buy our company. The truth is that I will not accept anything other than success. And I feel like if I walked away from this during those really hard times where I sold out, I would never know if I could have accomplished it. And if I turn 70 years old with no retirement, well, then that's on me. But we're going to find out. And I'm the way I programmed, I think I got this one in the bag. As long as I keep making the right decisions, I think that our future will be great.
I would say you're well on your way to success too. So, what's the worst experience you've had in business?
The worst experience, man, I don't know. It goes back to just barely getting by, making, so you always hear that the cost of tuition is expensive from just being, just learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going to college,
so,
right?
Right. When I didn't go to college and I didn't have that expense, I've lost a lot of money for making just some wrong calls here and there. And it's because I just didn't have the experience level ahead of it. So I've taken steps backwards sometimes, and I'll get depressed. I'll look at things and think, wow, we're not getting anywhere, and then I'll come up here on a weekend or early in the morning, and I'll walk in wherever no employees are here and there's no chaos going on, and I look around and I look at the shelves where there's well over $1 million worth of inventory, and I think, wow, this started with $900, and then somebody will, you deal with complaints. Sometimes we make mistakes, and you'll have a customer that you need to make sure is taken care of and happy, and maybe he's a little upset at you, and that stuff weighs on me really hard, and I won't sleep at night. But then you get guys that will call you and tell you that they had a great experience with one of your employees and whatever, and that in order for somebody to reach out to you and let you know that they were happy, that we must have made a good impression, because most people don't do that. They only call you if they're unhappy. Or they go online and talk about how well we've done and how well they've done with their car or their racing program, and that's my builder. That's what I sit back and I see those things and I go, okay, we're making accomplishments. We're moving forward. This isn't for nothing. And so, to be honest with you, sometimes I have to give myself a pep talk. I make sure to walk through the shop and give my guys a pat on the back and give them pep talks all the time. But the daily grind takes its toll on me.
Okay, awesome. So tell us something you're doing right now that has you fired up. It's on a good note, I guess.
To be honest with you, it's just this year. So our revenue is there, and I've never been programmed to look at numbers, profit loss, balance sheets, anything like that. I've just kind of trusted in the bookkeepers. This end of last year, we hired a CFO, and he's been spending time teaching me all these reports that I should have known a long time ago. And so this year is really just about us trying to become more profitable.
Okay.
Stop the bleeding of messed up shipments or damaged parts in the back and whatnot. Just the structuring of the company to become more of a solid foundation. This company has never had a marketing director or anything like that. Last year we hired a marketing director, and we're moving forward with marketing. To be honest with you, my drive has always been off of creating new parts. And so last year at the end of the year, we started training. We have an R&D room here, and we started training guys to design products and think the way I think, so that I don't have to do everything as much anymore. I'll still be involved, but the goal is to be able to just to get the company to run efficiently. And I'm excited about that, because that right there is really what's going to start building the company's savings for further growth. And if we hit economic hard times, but it's also going to help me build a retirement for myself. We have our race car almost finished. I'm excited to get back to racing. Back in the day, I actually went out and drove and raced, and then whenever the company took off, I seen all these great companies go out of business because the owners put their money in race cars, and I always thought, man, that's terrible. You can do that later. So I parked my car in 2011, and I've been building it ever since. But whenever money's tight, I push it over in the corner and cover it up. And it's actually at Race Wire Solutions in Illinois right now getting wired. And when it comes back, we're going to be ready to go racing. So I'm excited about going racing again. Whenever I stepped back from racing, I started flying around tuning race cars. And I would fly around, and I enjoyed that because I enjoyed the challenge of figuring out the car to get it to work. And I was learning new things. And that's where a lot of our new products came from, because I would see tuning issues with the other designs, and I would think, man, I can do something better than that. Last year, I took a step back from that because the shop needed me. I think this year I'm more excited just about the R&D room up and running, seeing the processes. We've assembled a management team, just all the stuff starting to come together. The hard work, the grind is finally just starting to come together to where a lot of people think we're successful already, but I don't. I think that whenever the company is running and it doesn't, and I can take a Friday off and go play golf, that's how I'm going to measure my success.
It's really funny how I mean, you are very similar to a lot of the people we interview in that we come from a very technical, want to tinker with cars, and that's like something that gives us like a feeling of accomplishment, right? So making a fast car, or running a 9-second quarter mile, or running a 6-second quarter mile, whatever it may be. And then as we kind of progress as like business owners, you take more of an interest in like making the business successful. So taking like, like you said, assembling a management team to improve the efficiency of it rather than just simply hiring more people all the time, right? So it's kind of cool to hear you say, like that is now what you're proud of is making the business, more of a business, I guess, right? That's kind of what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you start the thing just because you're a car guy and you're like, it'd be cool if I could do this for a living. And then it becomes a job, and you don't get to go do all the stuff that made you want to do something in that field. So in my view, once the company is profitable and it's running smoothly, I get back to having fun again.
Yeah, and that's ultimately exactly what you said. That's like how you measure success, is being able to do the stuff you enjoy. It doesn't have to be monetary. It just has to be doing what you enjoy to do, racing cars, playing golf, whatever it may be.
Correct.
Okay, so let's take a second here and pause, and we'll share some information about our sponsors. We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial. Okay, we're back with Nitrous Dave of Nitrous Outlet here. And Dave, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your company here? How big is the space you're in, and do you rent it or do you own it?
The building we're currently in is 13,000 square feet. We own it. It's the first building we've ever purchased. We've moved 9 times since 2000. So just all your ups and downs. And, like when we sold the speed shop, Nitrous Outlet, from there, it existed of one other employee and myself, so we didn't need that type of room. And then we went through all the growing steps of Nitrous Outlet. So with Nitro Days Performance, we moved, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And then we sold that, and then Nitrous Outlet has moved, another 5 times. We purchased this building January of last year whenever I left for PRI, we could not put any more inventory on the shelves, and it was all sitting in crates on the floor, and it was just an unorganized mess. And an opportunity came up for me to buy the building that we're in, and we bought it and renovated it, and we've already filled it up. And guys here have made comments saying we need more room. We're going to have to find another building. And I've determined we're going to sit tight until we're busting at the seams, and we're just going to concentrate on becoming more efficient this year.
Okay. And since you own the property, can you expand the building, or can you build more buildings on it, or is it kind of restricted?
No, I can. Okay. And that's probably something we're going to have to do. I don't even have anywhere to park my hot rods. So they're sitting and receiving and sitting in the R&D room in the way every day.
All right. Okay, and then here's the question that I presume that you have not written a formal business plan before, but now that you have a management team, have you guys put together a business plan?
Just yesterday. So the first part of that is we know where, my management team and us sit down and we write kind of what our goals are.
Okay. And
then so we hired a CFO just to come in so that he could build our budgets. We've never had any budgets. We just did what we felt right or wrong, and so we're excited that this year we can, instead of making hopeful guesses, we're going to make some educated decisions. And so we're making the processes now. Like yesterday, I was with our CFO for half a day, just laying out everything from where payroll needs to be to what our marketing budget needs to be, and just all these different things that we've never had before. So we're doing more forecasting now just to kind of give ourselves guidelines than we ever have done.
Okay, very cool. And how many employees are you at right now?
We have 30.
Okay, do you find it difficult to manage them?
I find that everybody has different needs in life, and so while I come in and I'm programmed that I just want to go, 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 a lot of times you have to spend time on a personal level with your employees because they have things that go on at home that affect how they perform, or are they at work. They have goals that they want, and they need to know that they have a future and that they're not spinning their wheels. Same way I felt, which is why I opened my own business. So you spend a lot of time with just the relations of the employees.
Okay. And you touched on this earlier, but I wanted to follow up on it. So being in Waco, you said it's hard to find employees. Are all the people you're bringing in from the Waco area, or do you like relocate people to get them?
I've relocated some people here. So what, back to where we talked earlier about the cost of living being cheaper here. You can look at some of the titles of what we hire here, and you look out in bigger cities and it pays a lot more. We haven't grown to the point and became sustainable where we can compete with pay like that. So it's not like if you put out an ad, people will from bigger cities will say, well, hey, it must be paying this, and they find out we don't pay that. So then incentive for a lot of these positions just isn't here yet for them to move to Waco. So we're better off hiring within Waco. Now I have moved a few guys here for different positions.
Okay.
But we're still, the company's still going through that weird growing stage as well. We're trying to establish, we keep increasing pay as we go. Mm-hmm. And for our positions now, we're competitive for Waco, but we're not competitive to some of these bigger cities.
Okay. And do you find yourself spending your time working, like doing the actual work, or it sounds like you've kind of transitioned to more managing the business, not just like running the CNC machines or, like sweeping the floors. I mean, do you find yourself doing that stuff ever?
I'm still working. My goal is to get it to where I can, I will never be one to stand back. Like if I can get things running smoother, I'm going to say, okay, what are we taking on next? That's just how I'm programmed. And so a lot of times I'm out there building parts, or I'm doing whatever it takes to make sure if we have an area where we're crippled, I'm in the middle of it. And so a lot of guys will try to blow up my phone all day, and I have my buddies that they'll want to talk, or a racer want to tell me about how their program did, and I want to take time out to do it. So what tends to happen is during the day I'm out in the grind of the shop just trying to get things to run smoothly and make sure that everything's taken care of, and working with my managers for us all to become more fine-tuned. Okay. And then the flip side of that is that means after work, that's when I'm returning all the phone calls or answering the emails or texts or PMs, and I work with a lot of racers. They all have my cell phone number. They used to all call, but I have a family and they need my attention too, and so I've actually changed it to where they all text me. Okay. Because I can help 5 or 10 people instead of just one if we're texting. Right. And they can send me pictures of their spark plugs, and I can walk them through tune-ups, whatever we need to do. And I'm still fighting, especially with social media. Like at the end of the day, I'm tagged in so much stuff, or I needed help with this, and a lot of people feel like they have to talk to me, and they don't realize that I have a team put together that are capable of doing 90% of what I do. I mean, I taught them from scratch, and they're really good at what they do. But so a lot of times it's me just diverting people, I'm not sure that's the correct word, but me guiding people to the right guy that can work one-on-one with them to make sure that their needs are completely filled, because I'm spread so thin right now, I just can't do it all. I want to say the biggest fight of what's going on right now is me turning it off whenever I get home and giving my family the attention they need.
Me too. So how many hours a week are you working?
It's nonstop. I operate on, if I'm lucky, 4 to 5 hours of sleep. I work pretty much 7 days a week. Sometimes I do get to take off, but I push myself to the point where I'm just mentally done. Last night I said, hey, I had some stuff I needed to do for Cameron, our CFO, and And last night I had decided whenever I get home, I'm not going to turn on the computer or nothing. I still found myself on my cell phone, and by the time I laid in bed, I said, man, I need to start just saying, okay, tonight I'm not picking up my cell phone when I get home, because you see it taking its toll at home as well.
Mm-hmm. What are your actual shop hours? When is the business actually open?
We open from 8:30 to 5:30.
Okay, and that's Monday through Friday?
Correct.
Okay. And you said you have a family. How has that changed your work schedule? I mean, you said, are you trying to dial it back for them, or are they pretty understanding of working long hours?
My family's pretty understanding, and we have a nice support group. It does take its toll on the family. I'm trying to learn to turn it off. That's hard for me. And that's my biggest battle. But like, my daughter's 3, she takes gymnastics. I try to make myself leave on Tuesdays by 5 o'clock, just to go see her at gymnastics. And the reason why I do that is because when I was a kid, my dad never showed up to anything, and I remembered that to this day. So I make sure that I try to take time out for these things. And whenever I show up at gymnastics, my daughter stops the entire class to yell, "Look, my daddy's here." And so that makes me proud.
Awesome. Okay. And what are the primary tools of your trade? I mean, what are you using to manage the business? It sounds like you have a CFO, but are you guys using like QuickBooks? Do you have a shop manager? How do you break it down?
Most of it's just common sense. The truth is we're still in QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions. Mm-hmm. It provides a lot of issues. They say it'll take so many users, and for what we're doing at this point, it's just we've outgrown it. The next step is more of a stream type system. We're looking at 25 to 30 grand to switch over.
Yeah, it's expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, the big problem is I think it will make us more efficient, and therefore save us money.
Yeah.
I don't have the manpower to research what we need, and I haven't had the time, just because I'm literally going nonstop, all day.
Okay.
And so that's one of our goals for the first part of this year, is to start researching a different system and get out of QuickBooks.
Okay. And your primary sources of revenue, obviously you got rid of the service entirely. Is it mostly manufacturing? Are you still doing any like selling other people's parts? Are you doing engineering for like custom setups? Like, how kind of break down your revenue?
We're kind of unique. Whenever you look at all the other nitrous companies, I want to say we're probably the most unique. For one, because we have the huge manufacturing side. Our manufacturing side is unique because it's not just braided hoses thrown into a box. We assemble and we assemble the product. So your solenoids are have the fittings Loctited into them. They're screwed to a custom made bracket to fit your car. It's prefabricated hard lines. We hand bend, hand flare all the hard lines. We literally hand build the entire system. And then, so that's the reason we have so many employees, because everything goes through a process. And if you got a new Corvette and you order one of our Corvette systems, it's made for that car. That means we actually brought that car into our R&D room, we tore it apart, and we built a system around it. So if it needed a 90-degree fitting going into the solenoid, it's on there. So if it's your only Saturday off, you're not going to start trying to lay it out and go, man, this looks like crap, because they sent you some universal crap, and then have to put your car back together so you could drive it to work Monday, and just to tear it apart again once the parts you had to buy come in. Ours is all there. So we have the production side that I call manufacturing there, but then we also have a huge service area. We have race teams send us their intakes in. We have individuals send their intakes in. I have 6 or 7 guys just in our intake department. I have a full-time aluminum welder, 2 machinists. We convert carburetor intakes to fuel injection. We put nozzle bungs. We do all kinds of custom work in that department. We have a full 3 guys in this building that are capable of plumbing intakes. And if you look at our intakes, and I don't mean to sound cocky, but if you look at any of our pictures of our intakes, our layouts are the sexiest ones in the industry. And it's because all of our curves have to match. The flares have to kiss down perfectly. Whenever an intake's finished, I go through the room with a Sharpie. And if there's one line that I look down, it's like I say I get this from framing houses. When you look down a wall, you can tell if it's got a bowl in it.
Okay.
And so whenever I look down the side of an intake, if the hard lines don't perfectly match on the bends, I reject it. So we're real picky in that. So we got the custom plumbing department, and then we flow vent services. There's so much custom stuff we do, and to be honest with you, that's not where the profit is. That just helps us sell product.
Yeah.
I wish I could cut that out, to be honest with you, because it requires so much time and skill with very little profit, because you have to match what the industry is, and we leak test every single intake for leaky flares and fittings, and we go through all these different steps that I don't think our competition does, but we still have to match their pricing, and that makes it less profitable to do.
Okay.
But you need that, because you need those cars out there where people look at it and go, wow, that's nice. They have nice stuff. That sells all the other stuff that we do.
Okay. And so that kind of gets into the advertising and marketing you're doing. What are you guys doing? Sponsoring cars, building your own cars? It sounds like you said you were at PRI. What do you guys do for advertising?
We do. So it's kind of unique. We've really grown off of word of mouth. Last year was the first time I've hired a marketing director. He assembled a marketing team from scratch. They're still kind of figuring out their way. They sponsored some cars, which we haven't done in the past. Several of the Street Outlaw guys, several race teams. We're kind of unique. The guys that we sponsor are not the guys that called us and said, hey, I got a cool car, can I get free stuff? We kind of avoid those guys. We're looking for the guys that said, hey, I've bought your stuff in the past. It's the nicest stuff on the market. I want to continue to do business with us. Here's what I've done with your product. Can we work together? Those are really the guys. You're looking for return on investment for both of you. Those are the guys we sponsor. We have a very limited marketing budget, so we have to be smart with what we do. We sponsored Streetcar Takeover last year, 1320. That was the only people that, as far as like big things that we sponsored, they pretty much absorbed most of our marketing budget.
Okay.
And then we sponsored races, Donald Long's races. We sponsored several of no preps down in this area. No prep is getting huge down here. And so what we did is we sent out I converted my race car trailer. So I have no race car trailer, by the way. I converted my race car trailer into a vending trailer. I cut a big hole in the side of it, and had it wrapped and built stuff in there, and we sent it out. Well, the reason why is because I was going out to the races to help racers. And then I realized, hey, if I had some employees there selling some product, maybe I'll make enough that covers all of our expenses so that we can be there for the racers. So that's what we do. I have a trailer that has apparel on it and parts. So if a car breaks, even if they're not our customer, they can be a competitor's product customer. If a car breaks, they need a part. And so they get to come up and talk to my employees and get familiar with them and realize, man, these are good guys. And so that helps us with customer relations. I'm going to tell you that you can advertise anywhere you want and throw a logo or a banner up there. It does no good if you're not there to shake hands and smile.
Yeah.
So we go to about 2 events a month. It's really hard on us because we don't have the manpower. I don't want to put somebody in the trailer that doesn't know what they're talking about, because then what's going to happen, you put somebody in there just to sell a shirt, and somebody comes up and asks them a technical question, and the guy doesn't know the answer. They leave going, man, those guys are idiots. So it's really hard because we have to send one of our sales techs, or 2 of them or 3 of them, depending on the event, and it just kills our manpower here at the shop.
Okay.
So this year, other than Donald's races, that's the furthest away we're going. We're just doing some close no prep so we can load up Friday and be back Monday.
Okay.
But I got off track, but that was the majority of our marketing last year, because we had no budget and no clue what we were doing. As far as direction, just kind of like, hey, let's just play it smart. This year, Cameron's currently putting together a marketing budget for us, and then we're just going to have to monitor things and see the best return on investment we have, and we've assembled the team to do that now.
Cool. Yeah, and it's really funny. Like, you hit it spot on. As so many people ask for free stuff and then never give you any return on your basically sponsorship money or whatever you're giving them, whether it be time or product, and finding those people that can really, give you a good return for the time and money you're giving them is very hard. I think that's what I struggle with a lot, and now I just don't do any of it because it's so hard to get anything out of people. So
Kevin, I can tell you how hard it is. We get bombarded with so many sponsorship requests, and a lot of it, to be honest with you, is people that they have a car, so they think they're entitled. And I don't want to sound wrong here, but they get mad at us because I didn't have an employee there to respond to that. And the demand was so overwhelming that we just couldn't respond to it. So they would get mad because we hadn't responded, and they would go pay full price from one of my competitors for a product because they were mad that we didn't respond. And that was really hard. So now I have to pay a guy just to respond to that, because it was actually bad for business that we didn't respond. And so it's hard to tell somebody no. And I've had to tell them, look, so here's what you do. You explain to them how a return on investment is measured. It's a two-way relationship. It's not, hey, give me free stuff because I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. It's, hey, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to get you exposure here, and I'm going to create sales for you by doing this. And I think that a lot of people miss out on that beat, because I'm going to tell you, some of my competition will give anybody anything for free, especially to get my product off their car. And that makes it hard because I don't have the dollars. Some of those companies have other avenues of income. All we have is Nitrous Outlet, and we don't have our product mass made overseas. Okay. Whenever you look at our stuff, we advertise made in Texas, and it's because it's made. If it's not made right here in my building, it's made 5 minutes down the road. And the reason why we push that is because made in the USA don't mean crap these days. You can order a plate from overseas, get over here and screw 2 fittings in it, etch made in USA on it, and tell everybody it's made in USA, and it's not. So we fight that, and we fight therefore we don't have the sponsorship budget because we don't have the profit margin.
Well, if you're making it all in the States here, I think maybe in the next 4 years you might find to be an advantage versus importing it if all these, tariffs or taxes are put on imported products. That will help you out tremendously, I would think. So
it will. It'll keep the playing field honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on to the next long answer questions. I want to kind of talk about what you're going to be doing in the future here. So first of all, you already kind of touched on what you struggle with in business and managing time, especially with your family when you get home. And how are you dealing with that? Like, how are you trying to fix that?
To be honest with you, I'm not managing it very well. I have a pretty supportive woman. Generally, whenever I look at her and she's cutting her eyes at me and steam's coming out of her ear, I know I've pushed the line too far, and that's normally where I set the phone down. My goal this year is to not push it to that point and realize to turn the stuff off. And the way that I'm going to do that is by getting things to run more efficiently at the shop and level it out, so I don't have such a huge abundant workload on me. Generally, what tends to happen is also sometimes I don't get to see what's going on in our industry, mm-hmm. and the way that as far as if you're in the shop grinding all day to get customers' intakes done or whatever it is, your time for seeing that is after hours. Yeah. So you tend to find yourself on social media to see what's going on, and I always feel like that's important just to stay in tune with what's going on. But I'm kind of hitting this point now where I'm like, if I could get things to run more efficiently during hours, I could do that during hours so that I can turn it off. Because even if I don't pick up my phone, my mind's not there, So I'm trying – this year I'm going to concentrate on getting the shop to run more efficiently so that I have a better quality life at home.
Okay, cool. And the 1-year plan for the business then is what kind of growth are you hoping for? I mean, you said you're forecasting stuff. What are you hoping for this year?
To be honest with you, it's not going to happen, but I'd be happy if we stayed exactly where we're at and just became more efficiently, showing what January already was, and the pattern of the last 4 years. Everybody says that you want about a 15% growth. Even if we just maintained what we did last year to a 21% growth, I'd be happy with that, because the 60%, man, they were just a brutal beating. And I've seen that put a lot of good businesses out of business because you can't stay ahead of the cash flow and you can't stay ahead of the inventory, and you don't have time to run things efficiently. So if I'm hoping for maybe a 20% growth in running the company more efficiently, that would set us up. If Cameron, our CFO, said this is going to be a year of cleansing, which basically means go through and find the areas we're just making bad decisions and clean it up. So a lot of people just want more and more and more. I've turned away, big distributors. We turned Summit away for 2 years before we took them on because I was afraid I couldn't produce enough product to stay caught up with them and maintain our MAP policy and not ruin our, the dealings that we have with our current wholesale accounts. And I flew to Ohio and sat down with them on the year we finally decided to take them on. And I think that waiting until I knew I could do things correctly was the best decision I made. So last year, one of their competitors came to us and asked, and we could have made that deal happen, but we shied away from it, which is probably complete opposite of what most manufacturers want to do. And that's the only way I can control our growth right now is just basically say, hey, and I believe you only got one opportunity to make a first impression. And if I just went for every bit of business we could, and then I can't supply anybody, and we're messing things up, and the quality's going to crap, well then I ruined everything I've worked 16 years for.
And do you have a 5-year plan? Have you thought that far out?
No, I should, but I haven't. And that's part of hiring Cameron. That's his job to help me figure all that stuff out.
So you had a plan, and your plan is to hire him to figure out a longer plan.
Exactly. He's got his work cut out for him.
All right. Can you give our listeners an action item that they can use to kind of improve their own situation? What's something that you could tell somebody to, what they can do?
I talk to a bunch of young businessmen. I like to advise them. Even whenever I go teach classes at Hennessy or School Automotive Machinist or wherever I go, I always kind of like to give these younger generation guys or guys that are coming into the industry just kind of a talk. And if talking to other business owners that are starting out, I like to tell them just be ready to put in the work, and don't live outside your means. I see a lot of creative business guys come in and they start to make a little bit of money and they pull their funds from their business to go buy a new Corvette or a street bike or whatever they think they need. And then next thing you know, you read on the internet, so-and-so bought all these parts and this company took their money and disappeared. Mm-hmm. And so I think it comes down to everybody thinks that owning your own business is extravagant. And I tell people, look, you're going to put in more work than you've ever put in for less pay. And the hopes that whenever it levels out, you have a nice retirement. And the decisions you make during that time are very critical. And it also takes, if you're married, it takes a wife that's willing to put up with it and willing to ride the roller coaster with you.
Absolutely.
So just evaluate, evaluate everything as a whole and know what you're getting into.
Awesome. Good advice. Okay, so let's move on to the quick answer questions here. And these are just kind of tell us whatever comes to your mind here. Tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
We're known for being the most innovative nitrous company out there. I don't think anybody can dispute that. From our stinger plates to our pucks to now we got the stream of electronics coming out. I have some items I'm not ready to talk about because we're in the patent process that will be industry changing. I'm very excited about those items because you go out and you figure out an area that's lacking or an area of improvement, and then you figure out how to do that and take that idea and execute it. And then it has to go through the R&D process, and then you get it made, and then you have to test it. And so you test it on a flow bench, and then it goes to a car, and you're like, well, we need changes. So you go through all these processes, and then you bring them out. Like our puck, when we first released the puck, it's completely different. Mounts in the floor of the intake in a nutshell and blows it directly down the intake. I get Google reports where people talk about us. And there were some guys in California who talk about we were idiots and did not understand how nitrous worked. Look at our discharge patterns; they're terrible. And I logged onto that forum, but I never made a post. And I just read, And so we had already, before we bring something to market, we will have well over 6 months of testing on it, which means it's been in a car, if not multiple cars, and we do things. And so I already had all the data. And I watched that forum go from these guys are idiots to, whoa, this is cool, I'm getting one. And so it was rewarding. I never even made a comment there. I just watched to kind of evaluate how things were going. And I think that what helped me there is because I used to be the largest distributor. Remember back when we used to be the largest distributor of another competitor, they would design parts, send it out to their customer, and let their customer test it. And a lot of times it was junk because you don't always just create a perfect product right off the bat. I refuse to do that. And I think that that's the reason why whenever we release a product, it has such an acceptance now. As we hit different markets, we concentrate on niche markets and hit different markets. You know, like if you're familiar with No Mercy or Lights Out, which is Donald Long's race, there's normally 300, 350 cars on the premises. 3 years ago, when we showed up to that race, there was one car on the premises with anything Nitrous Outlet. Nobody knew who we were. Now, just about any pit you walk into has something of ours.
Cool.
And that's from designing a product and making sure the quality is there and that the product does what it's supposed to do.
Awesome. What software program are you using daily?
We use a bunch of different stuff. I mean, we use SolidWorks. We use, stuff, Illustrator for the marketing side, or Photoshop. A lot of the raw stuff that we do, we'll take and hand mill it. We got manual machinists back here that are awesome. You should see some of the stuff we machine that people go, wow, because they knew it took time to do it. And then over the last year or two, I've pushed my machinists, like whenever like I told you, I kept turning down Summit because we couldn't support it. I came back from PRI one year and realized it was either time to open a machine shop or get my machinist to purchase the equipment I knew that they needed to be able to stay caught up with our, keeping us in stock. And I had done the math. It didn't make sense to start my own machine shop. It made sense to get the guys that were the badass of Waco, Texas, to have the machines to keep me in stock. So I gave them POs to pay for that equipment and said, let's go. And they went. So now if I need one-off parts, we'll hand mill it and they'll machine it. But we're actually fixing to buy a 3D printer to try to streamline the R&D process a little bit. So we use various little pieces of program, but some of the programs that the other guys that are doing stuff for us, I'm not real sure what they're using.
Do you have engineers then?
Everybody thinks I'm an engineer, and I'm not. I just understand how things work really well. But I have in a sense, because the way I've structured myself with partners, as far as the machine shop owners and stuff and the relationship we have, I have a team of engineers between the guys inside my shop and them.
Okay.
That it's a group of people I've assembled that we all work very well together, and because of that, we're able to produce the products that we do.
Awesome. And do you have a favorite app that you use? And this could be anything, like Facebook, Instagram. One guy said Dunkin' Donuts app. So anything.
I don't guess I do. I got these friends that know all this different stuff, and they utilize their electronics a lot more efficiently than I do. I still two-finger type, so both my index fingers go to town. But I'm kind of behind. I'm going to say that I'm probably on Facebook more than anything. If that's probably the most app I use.
It's the most common answer too.
Right, I bet.
What's your favorite shop tool?
A favorite shop tool?
Yeah,
our flow bench. Our flow bench is unique because it's about 13 years old. This year we updated the data logger and the computer on it. We entered the market a little bit different. We used the flow bench for research and development. Some of my competition, we posted pictures of it earlier on, and some of my competition has followed suit. And they did it to sell tune-ups, and we didn't. And now this year, we're just now selling tune-ups to our customers. We don't flow other people's products currently, only because we don't have the manpower. We stay so overpacked just doing our stuff. But the flow bench is definitely the coolest tool. If I walk through there and somebody's flowing something and I just grab my cell phone and shoot the big cloud of nitrous coming out of it. Man, it goes viral on our Facebook page. Everybody just loves seeing it.
And what kind of car are you daily driving?
I have a Dodge 2500, 2014, and I daily drive it. I do have a little 2004 single cab Chevy truck. I'd like to have another street car, but to be honest with you, I can't afford one. You know, it's kind of like we need a truck to pull the trailer. And so whenever I bought that little 2004 single cab, so that whenever the guys take my truck to pull the trailer to the racetrack, I had something to drive. So
you'd be amazed at all these interviews we've done. Very, very few of them have any fancy cars. Most of them are just, you know, a truck or some just normal car.
You know, I think the reason why is if you want to be a successful businessman, you have to let the business breathe first.
Yep.
And so you really got to be willing to make that sacrifice. Growing up, I had the coolest, you know, earlier on, I didn't have the fastest cars until I probably got in my mid-20s. But I always had, once I got to where I was framing houses and got out of high school and stuff, I had nice, fast cars all the way up until my 30s. And now that I'm in my 40s, it's just not as big as a priority to have a nice street car right now.
Okay. And what do you think the future of automotive performance is going to be?
You know, I don't care which side of the election you go to, and I hate to talk about politics, but from an EPA standard, Donald Trump coming in office was a great break for us car guys.
Agreed.
So there for a while, I was kind of, you know, paying attention. I've never been one to pay attention to politics, but as a small business owner and a car enthusiast, it greatly affects us. So I started paying attention to it. I think that right now, for at least the next 4 years, we have a lot of area to keep having fun with what we do. And there for a while, you know, SEMA was battling EPA and the government on all these restrictions they're wanting to throw on us. They don't even want us modding cars at all directly from the factory. That could greatly impact anyone in our industry, or affect anyone. Impact would be the correct word. That could greatly impact anyone in our industry. So I think that right now we're looking good, and we're going to continue hot rodding, and we're going to keep designing parts, and we're going to keep doing what we're going to do. What the future holds, I don't know.
And on your point here, exactly what you're talking about is everybody who's listening to this needs to be sure that they tell their congressman about the RPM Act that SEMA has put together. To clarify it, it's really cutting out the, you know, race cars, off-road use sort of stuff from the EPA's, I guess, jurisdiction, making it legal to modify them. And currently, the EPA's interpretation, this is what you're getting at, was that anything you do to any car that was meant for, you know, EPA restrictions, you cannot modify it without a CARB certificate from California. So there's no such thing as a 49 state legal. It's California legal or not legal.
And that's scary. That's really scary.
So, okay. Well, how do we connect with you and your company?
NitrousOutlet.com is our website. That's a great way to see the products we offer. You can email us at customer service at nitrousoutlet.com. Or you can call 254-848-4300.
Cool. Dave, I really wanted to appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain